There's a vegetable sitting in millions of kitchens around the world right now. You've probably eaten it hundreds of times, mashed, baked, fried, boiled. And yet, almost nobody stops to ask a simple question. How did this ordinary potato become one of the most important plants in human history? Because this isn't just food. This humble root has fueled empires, transformed economies, triggered one of history's deadliest famines, forced millions of people across oceans, and quietly helped shape the modern world. No crown, no throne, no army. Yet it changed history more than many kings ever did. And by the time this documentary ends, you'll never look at a potato the same way again. But every extraordinary story has an ordinary beginning. To find this one, we have to leave behind modern cities, leave behind Europe, and travel nearly 8,000 years into the past, high above sea level, far above the clouds, hidden deep within the Andes Mountains of South America. Near the shores of Lake Titicaca lies one of the harshest farming environments on Earth. The air is thin, the nights are brutally cold, the days are dry. The soil is rocky and unforgiving. Even today, surviving here is difficult. So imagine living here thousands of years ago. No metal tools, no machines, no modern agriculture, just mountains, stone, ice, and the constant struggle to survive another winter. Almost every great civilization in history began beside rich rivers and fertile valleys. Egypt had the Nile, Mesopotamia had the Tigris and Euphrates, China had the Yellow River, but the potato story began somewhere completely different. A place where farming should have been nearly impossible, and hidden among the rocks grew a strange little plant. Its underground tubers were tiny. Many tasted bitter. Some contained enough natural toxins to make people seriously ill. Most civilizations would have ignored it completely. The people of the Andes didn't. Instead, they saw potential. Generation after generation, families carefully selected only the healthiest plants to grow again. The biggest potatoes, the least bitter ones, the strongest plants. Every harvest became slightly better than the one before it. Without realizing it, these ancient farmers were performing selective breeding thousands of years before anyone understood genetics. But choosing better plants wasn't enough. The mountains were still unpredictable. A single season of bad weather could destroy an entire harvest, so they began changing the mountains themselves, stone by stone. They carved enormous terraces into steep hillsides. They built irrigation channels that carried melting snow exactly where crops needed it. Entire landscapes were reshaped by human hands, not to build palaces, not to build temples, but to protect one humble crop. What they created became one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. And then, they made an even more remarkable discovery. When freezing nights arrived, freshly harvested potatoes were left outside beneath the open sky. The cold froze them solid. When morning sunlight returned, families gently pressed the water from the thawed potatoes using their hands and bare feet. Night after night, day after day, the same process continued, slowly. The potatoes dried. They became lighter, harder, almost impossible to spoil. The result was something called chuño, a naturally freeze-dried potato capable of lasting for years without refrigeration. Think about what that really meant. Thousands of years before electricity, before refrigerators, before modern food preservation, an ancient civilization had already discovered a way to make food almost immune to time itself. This wasn't just farming anymore, it was survival technology. It meant communities could survive failed harvests, long winters, drought, even war. For the first time, food could wait for people, instead of people racing against hunger. That single discovery quietly laid the foundation for one of South America's greatest civilizations, the Inca Empire. But history was about to take an unexpected turn, because while the people of the Andes had discovered one of the world's greatest treasures, someone else was sailing across the ocean, looking for a very different kind of treasure. History has a strange habit of hiding its greatest discoveries in the most ordinary places. The people of the Andes had spent thousands of years turning a wild, poisonous plant into one of the greatest survival foods ever created. But they never imagined their greatest invention would one day leave their mountains forever. Then, in 1532, everything changed. Spanish ships appeared along the coast of South America. They came with steel armor, war horses, cannons, and one goal above all else: gold. The Spanish conquistadors marched into the Inca Empire, searching for precious metals that could make kings even richer. Temples were stripped, treasures were melted down, entire cities were claimed in the name of the Spanish crown. But while they searched for gold, they kept walking past something far more valuable: the potato. To them, it looked like nothing more than a strange root growing beneath the soil. No sparkle, no beauty, no obvious value. Certainly nothing worth fighting over. Ironically, the gold they carried home would eventually disappear into royal vaults and private collections. But the potato would go on to feed hundreds of millions of people. Within a few decades, this small Andean crop crossed the Atlantic Ocean aboard Spanish ships. Its destination was Europe, a continent that desperately needed more food. But instead of celebrating this remarkable discovery, Europe rejected it. The potato arrived in the late 1500s as a complete stranger. It grew underground. Its flowers resembled poisonous nightshade plants. And because people couldn't see the food growing above the soil, many believed there had to be something unnatural about it. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed potatoes caused leprosy. Others insisted they were poisonous. A few religious leaders questioned whether they should even be eaten because the Bible never mentioned them, instead of feeding families. Many potatoes were fed to pigs. Others were grown only as decorative garden plants. Imagine that for a moment. One of history's greatest solutions to hunger sat quietly in European soil, while people continued starving around it. More than a century passed. Generation after generation ignored the crop that could have transformed their lives. It remains one of history's greatest missed opportunities. So what finally changed their minds? Not science, not curiosity. Hunger. Repeated crop failures swept across Europe. Grain harvests collapsed. Bread became scarce. Food prices exploded. Families who had never questioned their diets suddenly faced empty tables. For the first time, the strange plant growing safely beneath the ground looked less frightening and far more valuable. Unlike wheat, potatoes survived many storms. Unlike grain, soldiers couldn't easily destroy underground crops during war. And unlike many traditional foods, a surprisingly small piece of land could feed an entire family. Slowly, farmers began planting more potatoes, but acceptance still wasn't happening fast enough. So governments stepped in. In Prussia, King Frederick the Great believed potatoes could protect his kingdom from future famines. He didn't simply recommend growing them, he ordered it. Royal decrees were sent across the country. Officials encouraged farmers to plant potatoes wherever they could. Many resisted at first, but over time, the harvests spoke for themselves. Meanwhile, in France, another man was fighting a completely different battle. His name was Antoine Augustin Parmentier. After surviving for years on potatoes as a prisoner of war, he returned home convinced that Europe had misunderstood this remarkable crop. Instead of arguing with people, he changed the way they saw it. He served elegant potato dishes to members of the French elite. He convinced influential leaders to taste them. According to popular accounts, he even placed guards around potato fields during the day, only so curious villagers would steal them at night. Whether every detail of that story is true or not, one thing certainly is: public opinion began to change. Fear slowly became curiosity, curiosity became acceptance, and acceptance quietly became dependence. Without realizing it, Europe had just begun one of the biggest agricultural transformations in its entire history. What happened next was something nobody could have predicted. As potatoes spread across Europe, they quietly transformed the continent. A single acre of potatoes could produce far more calories than the same land planted with wheat. Families that once struggled to survive suddenly had reliable food. Children who might never have reached adulthood now had a better chance of growing up. Villages expanded, towns became cities. Europe's population began growing faster than ever before. Factories found more workers. Armies found more soldiers. Entire economies grew stronger without attracting much attention. The potato had quietly become one of the engines behind modern Europe, but nowhere embraced this miracle crop more completely than Ireland. Unlike many parts of Europe, much of Ireland's farmland was divided into very small plots. For poor farming families, there simply wasn't enough land to grow large amounts of grain. The potato changed everything. Even a tiny field could feed an entire household for nearly a year. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, day after day, year after year, potatoes became the center of everyday life. By the 1840s, millions of Irish men, women, and children depended on potatoes for almost all of their daily calories. To them, the potato wasn't just another crop, it was survival itself. And because it worked so well, almost everyone planted the same few varieties. At first, that seemed like the perfect decision. The harvests were excellent, families were healthy, communities grew larger, life appeared more secure than ever before. But beneath the soil, a silent danger was waiting. In the autumn of 1845, a deadly disease reached Ireland. It spread quietly at first. Healthy green leaves suddenly developed dark patches. Within days, entire fields turned black. When farmers dug into the ground hoping to save their harvest, they found soft, black, rotting potatoes that smelled of decay. The disease was known as potato blight. Today, we know it was caused by a microorganism called Phytophthora infestans, but at the time, no one understood why it had appeared. No one knew how to stop it. And because nearly everyone depended on the same genetically similar potato varieties, the blight spread with terrifying speed. One harvest failed, then another, then another. Families who had relied on potatoes every single day suddenly had nothing left to eat. Food disappeared, livestock was sold, homes were abandoned, children grew weaker with every passing week, entire villages fell silent. What followed became one of the greatest human tragedies of the 19th century. Over the next several years, around 1 million people died from starvation and disease. More than another million were forced to leave their homeland forever. Crowded ships filled with desperate families crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Many passengers were so sick that these vessels became known as coffin ships. For countless families, there would never be a journey home. The same crop that had once saved millions of lives had now become the center of one of history's greatest disasters. But strangely, the story still wasn't over, because those ships weren't only carrying refugees, they were carrying the future of entire nations. And the world they were sailing toward would never be the same. Those overcrowded ships carried far more than frightened families. They carried traditions, languages, skills, dreams, and they carried a future that would reshape countries on the other side of the Atlantic. Millions of Irish immigrants arrived in places like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Toronto, Liverpool, Melbourne, and Sydney. Many stepped onto foreign soil with little more than the clothes they were wearing. They worked on railroads, they built bridges, they dug canals, they laid roads. They became teachers, police officers, firefighters, soldiers, politicians, and business owners. Generation after generation, they helped shape the cities we know today. It's astonishing to think that entire neighborhoods, family histories, and communities across America can trace part of their story back to the failure of a single crop nearly 2 centuries ago. In a strange way, the potato didn't just feed people, it quietly redirected the movement of millions of lives. And that's why historians often describe food as one of history's greatest hidden forces. Wars may change borders, kings may write laws, but food decides whether civilizations survive long enough to make history in the first place. After the Irish famine, scientists and farmers realized something humanity could never afford to forget. Depending on a single variety of any crop is incredibly dangerous. If every plant shares the same weaknesses, one disease can destroy them all. That lesson transformed agriculture forever. Researchers began collecting potato varieties from across the Andes. Plant breeders developed stronger, more disease-resistant potatoes. Today, thousands of potato varieties are preserved in seed banks and research centers around the world, protecting genetic diversity for future generations. The potato itself continued its journey across the globe. It spread throughout Asia, across Africa, into India, China, Russia, and countless other countries. Today, it's grown in more than 125 countries and produces hundreds of millions of metric tons every year. It's one of the world's most important food crops, from crispy French fries, to mashed potatoes, to chips, to soups, to traditional family recipes passed down for generations. The potato has become part of everyday life for billions of people. Scientists are even studying how potatoes could help feed astronauts on future space missions because of their remarkable efficiency and nutritional value. Yet despite everything we've learned, the potato still leaves us with an important question. Have we truly learned the lesson it tried to teach us? Modern agriculture remains incredibly productive, but much of the world's food still depends on a surprisingly small number of crop varieties. The same hidden vulnerability that once devastated Ireland has never completely disappeared. It simply looks different today. History has a remarkable way of repeating itself whenever people become too confident. Perhaps that's why the story of the potato still matters, not because it's just another vegetable, but because it reminds us that the smallest things often have the greatest influence. So the next time you walk through a grocery store or prepare dinner, take a moment to look at a single potato. No crown, no throne, no army, just an ordinary root that survived freezing mountains, built an empire, crossed an ocean, fed continents, triggered one of history's greatest migrations, and quietly helped shape the modern world. The potato didn't just change history, it became part of it. And chances are, history is still being written, one harvest at a time.